log on is not showing. Yes, sir.
Okay, one second. I'll just share the screen.
Okay, sir.
Now I think there should be no problem. You're able to see my SAP screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll just go back and then I will come in again. So I would log off and I would enter the same screen again. Madam, now you're able to see the screen? No, not yet.
No, sir.
Not
No,
yet,
sir.
sir. No, sir.
Oh, okay. So this is where we had stopped, I guess.
Yeah, now it's visible.
Okay. So what I did was I double clicked on my server, on the relevant server. So it took me to another screen. So I have been given access to client 600. I think most of them would be given access to client 600. So I would be given a unique user ID. I would be entering that user ID and a password. I would enter my password and just press enter. Now there is a screen which opens out for me in the easy access mode. Can you see this SAP easy access on top? This typically in SAP terminology is called as
Sir,
the end user screen. Yes, madam?
sir, it's not showing. Easy access screen is not showing, sir.
My God, what is happening? It shows it's being shared in my this one. Hmm. Now, madam, you're able to see the.
Yeah, it's
Yes, sir.
visible, sir.
Yes, sir.
Why is it happening? I don't know. Okay. Now, once I give the credentials, when I give my credentials, I enter into something called as the easy access. Can you see this on the top in the center of the screen? So this in the SAP terminology, we call it as a user screen. So here is the place where I enter the transactions pertaining to the business. Let it be a purchase, let it be a sale, let it be a journal voucher, whatever entries I want to record within the SAP system, I would enter this particular screen. Now, how would I access? How would I enter into a specific option? So I would pick up my accounting module. So can you see the arrow pointing right? So that is an indication that there is a list under that. Again, you can see a big list. Again, I would get into the financial accounting. I would pick up the option whether it's an accounts receivable or if it's an account payable or a bank or a fixed assets, right? So I would go to, let me assume I would want to enter a journal voucher. So here also I have various options wherein I can enter the journal voucher. Okay. So this is how I navigate within the SAP screens. Now, here is the place where the user enters the data. But how is actually the business setup or business configured, and by whom is it configured? See, SAP is a standard system. It has its own deliverables. It has its own things. Now, when I want to customize the SAP system to a specific customer, to a specific business, who does all this? It is the consultant who customizes the standard SAP system into the customer's requirement. So how does he do it? So he understands the requirement of the customer and transforms the requirement into SAP deliverable. Now, where does the consultant enter or customize the SAP system. So he has a different role to play in the SAP projects. He gets into the customizing screen by simply typing in SPRO. This is called as a command box. The empty space what you are seeing here and where I have typed SPRO, that is called as a command box. And SPRO is called as a transaction code in SAP. So all these things what you're seeing, FB50, FB50L, all these things, they are the transaction codes representing a specific transaction. So what do I mean by that? FB50 is enter a GL account document. It is simply entering a journal voucher. Now suppose I want to enter a customer document or a customer invoice. Where do I do it? I go to accounts receivable, go to document entry. Here can you see the code changes from FB50 changes to FB70. So as and when I enter or when I choose the preference, whether I want to enter a vendor invoice or a vendor receipt or a vendor payment or a customer invoice or a customer receipt or an asset posting, right? So all these things, I go down to that particular option and then I would pick up, and accordingly the transaction code would also change. So basically in the live SAP systems, the end users will not be given the access for a whole lot of transactions in SAP. Let us say I am working in the accounts receivable department. So my role and my transactions would be restricted only to the extent of the accounts receivable department. I cannot enter into the AP module or AP branch and see, because it is I can either be given the access to view, but I cannot change anything in that. I cannot do anything in that options. So if I am, so this is called as the, so my roles and functions in a specific organization would be decided, and accordingly what is permissible within the SAP system, the access is given to me, right? So this is how I navigate within the SAP system. So I was just talking to you about the role of a consultant, where he customizes the standard SAP system to meet the requirements of a customer's business. Now let us say the customer is into a telecom business, or maybe into a retail business, or maybe into an oil and natural gas business, or maybe into a media business. So is the setup being the same in SAP system? No, the setup changes because the business is changing. Okay, the very nature of the business is changing, and that is why you need to configure or you need to customize the SAP system based on the requirement of your customer. So who and where would this be done? The person who does is the respective consultant. Let me say I am customizing the purchase department or the purchase function of an organization. So the material management person would be responsible for doing that. Suppose I want to customize the sales activities of a particular organization. Who would be responsible for that? The person from the sales and distribution module would be responsible to transform the system to meet the requirements of the customer. Now I am a finance person. Now I would be responsible for configuring or customizing the financial transactions of the particular business. So where would all the customizations take place? The customizations would take place in a different screen called as SPRO. So by simply typing in SPRO in the command box, I enter into the customizing screen. After entering this, I can use this arrow, I can use this tick mark, which is equivalent to the enter key on my laptop or on my desktop. I enter. So this opens a totally different screen. So here SAP reference IMG. So your IMG stands for your implementation guide. So if I click on this option, I enter into the customizing mode or the customizing screen of SAP. So as you can see almost all the modules here. You can see the sales and distribution, logistics, real estate. You can see material management, plant maintenance. So since I am a financial consultant, I would go to the financial accounting option. So here also I navigate in the same way as I did in my end user screen, or which is the easy access screen. So I would select the relevant options out here and I would configure I would make the changes, or I would customize here to meet the requirements of my customer. Follow? Now I will stop sharing. Just give me a moment. So I'll share the navigation screen in your course material. So here is a slide where it gives you some information about the ERP navigation, which I just showed you. So the transaction codes are the shortcut keys for going into a specific transaction. Like I showed you how to enter into a general ledger, so the customer invoice. So the short keys, FB50, FB60, what you saw, or the SPRO, what I entered, they are called as a transaction codes. Okay. So this is where you will be initially entering all your information. This is called as a client. So what is a client? The client simply describes the logical existence within the SAP server. So if you talk about the arrangement of the servers in the live projects in SAP, you can see different sets of servers, so which will be having different clients, right? So client is nothing but a place in a logical space for you within the SAP system where the consultant or the user will be working. So probably you would be given access to the 600 client. So you would be entering. So once when you have the logon pad or the GUI on your screens, you double click and you will be entering the server details. And once you click on the specific server, you will be getting this screen, what you're seeing here. So here you will be entering the client, assuming that it is 600. So user and the unique password which will be given, and the password here is case sensitive, so caution should be exercised while using the capital letters, so please remember them or make a note of it somewhere, at least in the initial stages, because remembering it would be a little challenging. So this is the easy access screen which I showed. All right. So this is the place where the user or the end user, as we normally call in SAP language, he uses this particular screen to enter his data. Okay. Now, so there is a small demo on this where you'll be shown the same things what I just showed you, right? So this is about the SAP, the ERP, and also how you navigate the different screens, what is available to you within the SAP system, the SPR, the customizing screen, and your end user screen, right? So this is about the brief thing about SAP, right? So moving on. So as we discussed, so we spoke about the strongest point where SAP is gaining market is the robust integration it does with different modules. Like we'll discuss about the business processes, right? When we talk about integration, and especially for the FI consultants or the finance consultants, each and every module touches this invariably. The FI module invariably is, just a moment. So the finance module is one of the very basic modules which gets implemented in the first phases of the project. Simply why? Because what is business? Business is nothing but the inflow and outflow of money. So what happens? Who records this inflow or the outflow of money? It is nothing but it is the financial person who does this. Suppose you sell something, sell a product of your organization. So where does it get recorded? Suppose you spend some money paying salaries or maybe the rent. So where does all these things, who's responsible for building up this system? So it is the finance person, and hence finance plays a very, very basic and a very, very important role as far as the SAP implementation projects go, right? So FI, the finance module, integrates with almost every other module. Let us say you purchase. So where is it getting recorded? So the purchase department purchases, records it, and and its reflection happens in the finance module, right? So we have an integration. Now we are talking about two different modules. Similarly, your sales module. So if you sell something, right? So your FI module, so where does the sale get recorded? In your finance module. So now we are talking about the finance and your sales module. So like this, there is a integration between the modules, which is the strongest point in SAP. And here, since the role of a FI consultant is very, very important, You can also, and I have already told you the reason as to why. So we will slowly get into the integration part of it, and we will also discuss. So even before we start the financial activities, what is the roles and responsibilities of a financial consultant in terms of the data? So what data, even before I want to enter a specific transaction, let it say a simple journal voucher, say expense account debit to the bank account or the cash account. So who's responsible for building up this the general ledger accounts? So I exemplified with cash account or maybe the bank account and the rent account or the expense account. So who's building up all these accounts? It is the finance person. So he creates all this with the master data. He constructs the master data first. So each and every module has its own structure, or like just like we have the reporting hierarchy in the organization. So I report to my boss reports to his boss. So it's the hierarchy. So the similar organization structure is followed within SAP. So each and every module has its own master data creation. It has its own structure which is followed, which is typically given the name as organizational structure. So we will slowly discuss this organizational structure, right? So once when we get introduced to the basic concepts in SAP, so we will also get into the organizational structure, how, who and when the master data and how is the master data created, and what are the different types of master data that a financial consultant is responsible for. Now, interestingly, there is also something attached to the finance module, which is called as a CO, which stands for the controlling module. So what does this controlling module help us with? Basically, your controlling module is talking about your MIS reporting or maybe your management reporting. So if the finance is producing the data for, let us say, the balance sheet or the profit and loss account or the trial balance, so whatever statements, whatever information it is creating, it is created for the external sources. So what does one do with a balance sheet? So it is submitted to the auditors, it is submitted to the shareholders. But does it happen the same way with the CO data? No. The controlling or the management accounting data is a very sensitive information which helps the organization in strategic planning. So whatever data your controlling module takes, it generates, it is basically for the internal purposes only. So to study the profitability of a product, or how should I fix the selling price of a product? How was my product doing? In which region should I stop producing the product, or how should I improvise the sales? So all these things are the decisions which are, or maybe the reports which the controlling module or the management accounting module generates to help the strategic management planning. So even so, there also you have different master data which gets created. So in all modules, let it be let it be production planning, let it be material management, let it be sales and distribution, let it be the human resources. So in each and every module, we have the master data to be created in the very first place. So what master data is created by the finance person? We will slowly have a look at that. And let us get into the integration. Just a brief reading of the integration process. So let me just share the slides. So having said that this is the strongest point of SAP, so and FI being the basic module of integration. So let us see what the slides have to tell. Understand the integration with FI is the MM, HR and PP modules. So we will be looking at these integration points by studying the what should I say, the business processes being followed in SAP. So the FI and SD thing is called as the order to cash process. The FI MM integration is referred to as the procure to pay, right, or purchase to pay cycle. The HR, hire to retire, and the PP modules, production planning. So we actually have them in the form of cycles, which I just told you now. So these business processes. So now we see. So your FI module basically has a link to your controlling modules through the creation of master data, respective master data. So which we'll be looking at. So the finance creates a sets of master data, your controlling module, your MM module, your SD module. They all create their own sets of master data and they integrate at a specific point. So as you can see, the FI module, the general ledger, so salaries, employee advance, integration with the human resources, the accounts payable module, the purchases, okay, the payments to vendors, the accounts receivables, the sales and the receipts from the customers, and your asset accounting. So from the purchase of an asset to the retirement of an asset. So all this have a close binding with your finance module. So how each of the things so now we are talking about the sub modules within the finance module. So the sub modules being the general ledger accounting module, you have the AP module, you have the AR module, and you have the asset accounting module within the SAP FI module. Okay, controlling is a different thing. Controlling is a different subject altogether. Okay. So this is called as organizational structure, which will be introduced to. You don't have to, we'll have a look at it a little later. So this is about, so if you have a brief, so PP integration, so there is, so procure to pay, this is your cycles, business cycles. This is your FI MM integration. So so after creation or after seeing the master data, what SAP FI creates, we will slowly move into the business processes. So these are all the business processes in SAP. Your procure to pay, your order to cash, so hire to retire. Okay, so they are all the typical business processes which we are going to look at in the form of integration. Okay. So we just had a brief look at the integration part of it also. So now coming to the FI module. So as I said, we have n number of master data which we as financial consultants we create. So the first and the foremost thing what we actually do is creation of the organizational structure for the finance module. So what are the components getting into the finance module? And each module, as I said, is responsible for creating its own organizational structure. So the MM module creates its own organizational structure. The sales and distribution module, it constructs its own organizational structure. So each data is built on these organizational structures. Okay, the finance data, the MM data, the SD data. So they get built within the organizational structure, which we will be slowly discussing. 2 minutes. So we saw the two different screens in SAP. So we have different components as far as the finance module is concerned. We have different components to build up our organizational structure, right? So the construction of the organization structure is the most basic for any of the modules within SAP. So some of the terminologies which we are likely to get introduced to, I will look for that slide. Just give me a minute. So we were just talking about the organizational structure, typically for the FI module. So here we are saying different terminologies. So we saw the client, which we said, which is the logical instance within the SAP system. So what was it represented by as? So I gave it as 600. So we saw in the screen which was 800. So that was just an example. So here, when we talk about the financial organizational structure, the first and the foremost thing what we construct as financial consultants is something called as the company code. So the company code is nothing but you create the physical company within the SAP system. Let us take, for example, you are actually building up the SAP system for, let us say, Tata Motors or TCS or something, or even Hindustan Unilever. So all these things, the TCS, the Tata Motors, they are the independent units, right, on which the balance sheet or the other financial statements, they actually are built up. They draw their own financial statements. So they are referred to as company codes within the standard SAP FI module. Now, let us say we have now this is as far as a typical integration is concerned, material management integration with finance module. So you can see these are all the plant. What you can see under the plant, you have the storage location. So all these things, they are the organizational objects within the organizational structure called as plant, which is constructed by the consultant or the material management consultant. Now, as a functional financial consultant, we will be responsible for creation of a company code within the SAP system. So as I said, what is a company code? A company code is nothing but the business entity which is producing its own books of accounts. So it is a legal existence. So now let us assume that we have the company codes, we have the Tata Motors, we have TCS, we have Telco, whatever. So now let us say these independent business units, they are reporting to their Tata head office. So here we have two different concepts. Now we have the head office and we have the structures under the head office. Now you have this TCS, the Tata Motors reporting to the Tata head office. So here the Tata head office is also constructed as an entity within the SAP system. But the basic thing or the foremost thing what a the financial consultant constructs is something called as a company code. So this forms the base on which all your financial activities they start. As we saw in the pictorial representation, the plant, which is an organizational unit of the module, is also getting constructed under the company code. So now we see the importance of a financial functional consultant, because he is the person who builds up the necessary basic things for the other modules to start their functions. So the plant is built on the company code. Now we also have the sales and distribution module building up its structure within the company code. Right? So like this, we have everything, every module constructing its base under the company code. So we saw two terminologies now. One, the head office. The other one is the reporting branches, or maybe the reporting business entities. Now, suppose now we have the let us assume Tatas are my partners, business partners. So they want to have the MIS reporting. So as I said, for you to have the MIS reporting or the management accounting module, you have to have the controlling module implemented within SAP. So just like your finance module started with the company code creation, your management accounting activities also start with the creation of a basic organizational object called as the controlling area. So this controlling area sits over and above the company code. So one company code exactly talks to one controlling area. All right. So this is a relation which we have in the standard SAP functionality or in the standard SAP system. So the other things, when we get deeper into the controlling module, we have other concepts like your controlling and profitability analysis, your product costing module, right, and your material ledger. So they form the internal things of the controlling module. Okay, so when we talk about these modules, they also have something called as the operating concerns. So they report over and above the controlling area. So like this, the FICO consultant. So a person having, after he builds some experience within the SAP projects, it is expected that he also is an FICO consultant and not only in FI. So the responsibility of the management accounting module is also imperative. So to implement the controlling or the management accounting module, these are all the things which the consultant or FICO consultant builds. So you have, just like you had you had the company code for your financial activities, you have controlling area for your MIS reporting, and you also have some things like your operating concern for your profitability analysis and your product costing, right? So all these things, they are embedded within the CBO module. Okay. So when you want to implement them, you are talking about different things, operating concern. So let us not talk. So what I was trying to tell you was the finance consultant builds a basic structure on which all other modules, they start building their data or their organizational structure. Like we saw the plant under the controlling, we saw the plant under the company code. So we will slowly get into the SAP system I will show you what is the company code and how the the FI consultant builds this company code, and what are the other master data which we are going to talk about from the finance perspective. So it is not alone, it is not enough if you have only the control, only the company code. So company code is just a business entity which you are going to use as for you to record your financial transactions. So I also exemplified the company codes with Tata Motors and TCS, and okay. So they form the independent legal entities. Now the basic question, is it enough for me as a financial consultant to record my financial transactions with the company code alone? The answer is no. The function of the financial consultant builds various master data to actually start or to enable the recordings of the transactions, the business transactions. So what are the different kinds of master data he builds up? We will see in the due course. So we saw the company code. So we build up the company code within the SAP system, and we also assign, there is a concept of, once when you create something within the SAP system, to make it usable or to use that particular entity, we assign that to the master. We assign that particular creation to the company code. So in this way, we are telling SAP that this particular company code is using this entity. So it could be, what I was trying to tell you was, let us say I want to tell the SAP system that the brand or the business entity is using a specific financial year. Let us say, let us take an Indian typical Indian example, business example, where we follow the April to March calendar year, April to March calendar. So we open the business books on the 1st of April and we close the business books on the 31st of March next year. So what happens now? We have something which we'll have to mention that this is the specific year which my business entity is going to follow. Correct? So how are we going to do that? So it is the responsibility of a financial consultant. So once it defines this particular information within the SAP system, he assigns this information to the company code, which is going to likely to use that particular information. Okay, so When we go about looking at the SAP system, we also have some standard SAP deliverables in the form of the, as I said, well, let me take the financial year as an example. So do we have some standard setting or the standard deliverables within the SAP system? Yes, we do have some standard settings. Standard settings in the sense, what do I mean? Let me say the businesses across the globe, they use the calendar year. That is they open the business books on the 1st of Jan and they close on the 31st of December. So that is a typical business year. So in the Indian scenario, 1st of April, 31st of March. So here, the place or the entity to which I give this information gets assigned to the company code, to the business entity. So are these available as a part of the standard within the SAP system? Yes, they are already available as a part of the standard SAP system. So what SAP advises is we have to actually make use of the standards to the best possible extent and try to use them instead of duplicating the same information. That is a best practice method, what SAP proposes actually. Okay, so you take any construction, you take any information. Do we have anything which the standard SAP is delivered? Yes, we do have it. Right now, so regarding the master data, so the FI consultant, he creates his own master data. The consultant, he creates his own master data. The SD person, he creates his own master data. Now, where are we going to use this master data? Now, suppose I have to enter a transaction. Let me say expense account debit to cash or bank. So where do I know, where do I find this general ledger accounts? Let me say I pay rent every month. So rent account debit to bank, rent account debit to cash, in whatever form I'm making the payment. So where do I find this general ledger accounts? I need to build up the master, right? So it is a responsibility of the finance person to build up the master. Okay. So similarly, I just gave you an example of the general ledger master, but it is not only the master which the finance person constructs. There are many more such masters which the consultants they create. So we have the person creating something called as a plant. So the PP, the production planning person, may also get involved in creating the plant. So we have the salesperson creating his own master data, like say division or maybe the location, whatever, storage location. Okay. Of course, the storage location is created by the personnel. So like this, each and every master data is built up by the individual consultants, or we can also see down the line when we are discussing about the various master data, we can see that it can also be in the combination of two different modules. Let us say the the vendor master, let us talk about the customer master. So there it can be individually created or with the support of the respective modules. Let us say I am building as a finance consultant, I am building up a vendor master data. So I would definitely take the help of a material management or the purchase the purchase person. And if I'm building the sales master data or the customer master data, I would take the help of the sales module person. Okay. So this is how we individually create our own master data or in combination. So slowly we will see the different master data which gets created across the SAP system and who is responsible for what and to what. So how was this master data getting inside the SAP system? Where is this being held? Now the general ledger account master data. So where is it being held? So generally the data is being held in the form of tables. There is absolutely no doubt about it. But when we enter the transactions, let us say the journal voucher, the purchase entry, the sale invoice. Okay, so each transaction, let us say I buy a purchase, I purchase an asset and I retire an asset. Okay, so what happens? Each data is getting into the respective master data and also getting stored in the respective tables. Okay, slowly we will see the tables also, right? So what I wanted to tell you was the data, be it transaction data or the master data. So they are getting lodged or they are getting stored within the standard tables in the SAP system. Okay, so each master data or each transaction data has a different set of tables, and that is how the data is getting stored. Okay, so the normally the access to these tables, they are restricted, so they may or may not be given to all in the organization. So some people, they are handpicked and they are only given certain special authorizations to carry out certain operations within the or sensitive transactions, sensitive operations within the standard SAP system. So the authorizations is vested to only specific people who know what they are doing and they have spent on, they have understood the SAP system. Okay, and these authorizations, they are set or they are given to each and every individual, okay, based on his role within the organization. So as I said earlier, the person working in the accounts payable department may not have access to the data belonging to the accounts receivable module. He may or may not have. So even if he has, he may be having only the possibilities to view the data and not to edit them. Okay, so these are all the few things what happens within the standard SAP system. And so these rules and responsibilities, they are predefined, and there are certain sensitive transactions like say your depreciation run, or maybe you want to change your some data which is very sensitive. So the data cannot be duplicated or cannot be, the database structure should not be disturbed. So what normally the project structure has will be to have a strict control over the sanctity of the master data. In the projects, we normally have a department called as the master data management team, which actually controls the master data. Let us say I'm a consultant and I want to create something within the SAP system. Let us say I want to create a new general ledger account in my master data. So what happens? The master data management team, they would go through the master, or they would analyze the master, the general ledger account master, and then they would give me the requisite permission to either create or to use the general ledger account which is already there in the master, so that I would stop, or it would stop me from creating, and also the redundancy of the master data. So the master data being uh, data which is almost a permanent in nature, and there should be some sanctity to handle that master data, and so also the responsibility. I simply cannot keep creating master data just like that, right? It will disturb the the master. So normally, whenever you want to create something, be it the customer, vendor, or maybe even your general ledger account, so there is a specific team, or maybe when you're talking about the controlling module, you want to create a cost center, you want to create a profit center. So all these things, they are actually controlled by the master data management team in the live project scenarios. So you cannot straight away go and create a master data just because you are being asked to do it. Okay, so you will have to obtain the necessary uh, permissions to authorizations, and normally the authorization will be restricted also, especially for creation of master data. So just give me a minute. So this is about the master data, and we'll slowly see what is the finance person and what he creates down the line. Okay, so we saw the different points. I mean, I see we saw the modules with which the FI module integrates with, and there was no module which doesn't integrate with the FI module. So that being the basic reason for the importance of the finance module getting implemented initially in the projects. Right. Now, so we create the company code in the first place. So the creation is a different methodology altogether. So let us not get into the way the company code gets created and things like that. So each and every master data being sensitive, so we have good controls over them, or we'll have to place good control over them, and even during the transactions. We have strict roles being defined in the SAP projects. What do I mean by this? Like a user who's entering the invoices, the vendor invoices, may not be given access to make the payments, the transactions to make the payments. He would not be, so he would be given only the authorizations to make the purchases, not the payments. So like this, each and every person will have his role very well defined within the SAP projects, and the access also will be restricted or be given to that extent, right? So this is about a brief about the how the overall picture about how things flow, or maybe about the FI module, and we got introduced to other modules also. So the integration being the very strong point of SAP. And we also saw the different cycles, which we'll be looking at in greater detail. Maybe, okay, we can have a look at it right now, even before we get into the live SAP systems. I'll be sharing the screen. So this is typically your procure to pay cycle, which is an integration between your FI and MM modules. Okay, and how it happens within the SAP is a combination of both your FI and your MM modules. All right. So describe the structure of the procurement to pay process cycle. So it includes the master data of both your finance as well as your MM and your PP modules. All right. So everybody is able to see the screen.
Yes, sir.
I think there is some. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, sir, we are able to see.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So as I said, we have the involvement of two different modules and also the how the link is built between the two modules, the master data, which is independent for each of the modules. So here, I think it is exemplified with the car manufacturing unit, but I'm not taking this example. I'm just putting things in a very, very generalistic way. Be it any business, so master data is always the basic structure on which the modules they integrate. So he has described the business case also. So now I think there is a different business cycle. So this is, he has pictorically represented the FIMM cycle, right? So how does it start with? I first get the purchase requisition from the user department. So it gets converted into a official or a legal purchase order. So after the purchase order, we scout the market, the business scouts the market for the vendors to identify the vendors who can actually supply these items and on time. Right now, once when the goods come in, they are recorded within the SAP system. And once when the invoice comes for the purchase, we settle that through the process, FIMM integration process. And finally, the payment is being made. So with this, we have a lot of master data which gets created. Like say, you have to have a purchase order being created, you have a purchase request being created, you have a plant being created by the MM person, you have the company code getting created by the FI person, and you also have the general ledger accounts being created for all these transactions. So how does the goods receipt get recorded? So you have to record the boost up in the inventory. So there is a specific general ledger account. So all these things, they are the typical process of integration. So similarly, you also see the integration with the SD called as the order to cash cycle, right? I think probably we will see that in a couple of slides more. So this is briefly how the process to pay, I mean the procurement to pay process, it works. That was a pictorial representation, and the same thing is given it to you in the English form. Okay. So the purchase order gets created, and this gets a final approval of the finance department. So you can also see this being depicted in the form of a graph. So these are all your bill of materials and your other terminologies what you see here. It is basically the production planning module, which takes care of all this, or maybe with a combination of the MA module. Okay. So here he has taken a business example and then he has exemplified it. So various processes. He has actually gone through that very briefly. So basically, you have your FISD module, FIMA module, constituting the procure to pay cycle. Okay. So here we have the other cycle called as the order to cash cycle, which is a typical SD cycle. So here we have a modules of FI and SD combining to deliver the end result of the order to cash cycle. So what is this order to cash cycle? So the customer comes in, orders for a particular material, and then the cycle starts from the order to completing the sales till the payment. Till we receive the payment from the customer, the cycle goes on. So here also you can see the combination of the FI and the SD master data, right? So this is also order to cash is O2C or whatever, by whatever name we want to call it. So here also he has taken that same example, right? So as we said, so this is the strongest point which SAP has got a wonderful edge over the other ERP packages. So we will have a look at the master data of the FI module, okay, one by one. Give me a minute. So we saw how the modules they integrate, and now we are going to see at what level and how and what are the basic requirements to carry out this integrations. Okay, that we'll see when we discuss the master data, the transaction data. Okay, one by one. Let us go in an orderly manner. All right. So now, even before we get into the this integration and maybe even the transactions or whatever it is, how do we actually complete this setup of the basic structure called as a company code? So we just said that the company code forms the base for your financial activities and also your integration. So integration with the CO module, integration with your MM module, integration with your PP module, integration with your SD module, integration with your HR module, whatever may be the modules. So we will have to build up as financial consultants, we will have to build up so much of information even before we get ready to tackle all this. Now, what are the things? Now we spoke about the company code being assigned to a specific information regarding the financial year which it is going to follow. Like this, we have so many informations which gets assigned to the company code to enable the processes, not necessarily the integration, all the business functions in a smooth way. So we saw the financial year. So we have so many other things. So what is a master data? So this is also one of the master data. So we create that information and we assign it to the company. So any master data must be created and must be assigned or must be attached to a company code or to any of the organizational object to let SAP know that this is the information which this particular entity is going to follow. Right? Now, as far as the master data is concerned, so we see so many things from the financial perspective. So we'll first and the foremost we'll have to create the general ledger accounts for the business. Correct? So how does the transactions get recorded? So the transactions get recorded in the business through the general ledger accounts. So who's responsible for creation of this general ledger accounts? Obviously and logically, it is the financial person. So what does the consultant do? The consultant understands the process, the business process, and he builds up the master data for the general ledger accounts to fulfill the requirements of the business transactions. Right? So let it be a simple journal voucher or maybe anything, or maybe material purchase, or maybe an asset purchase, or maybe a sale of maybe sales functions, right? So like this, the first and the foremost master data, what a financial person constructs is your general ledger master data, right? But even before I proceed, did we see the place where we can get information about the help files of SAP? I was talking about the energy this one. I just showed you the place where you can extract the help files.
So the SAP Life GUI you are talking about, no, sir?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, sir. They have received. They have downloaded also.
Oh, fine, fantastic. Okay. And they have access to the materials also.
Yes, sir.
So that's what I was just taking them through. So that was just to help them how to go through the course materials and also the help files. Okay. Now, so when we talk about the general ledger master data, which logically gets constructed by the the finance person. So how does he start building up the general ledger account master data? So he understands the business, he understands the different processes of the business organization. He also understands the earlier setup, even before, earlier setup in the sense, even before that business unit was using SAP, what was the structure they were using as far as the general ledgers were concerned, the accounts were concerned. So to maintain or to have the same things, he will construct the general ledger accounts master data. So it is the whole and sole responsibility of the financial consultant alone. And after this, he assigns this to the company code, or he assigns this to the business entity, which we are referring to as the company code. So this tells SAP that this particular business entity or the company code is using this set of general ledger accounts for the specific business, right? So going by the standards of SAP, standard SAP allows you, when you define a general ledger account, SAP allows you a maximum of 10 digits. Digits in the sense 10 characters. Basically, it is a digits. So which we can use for the general ledger accounts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we can go. So it all depends how you want to structure your general ledger account master. It is up to the financial consultant. So as I said, once he builds up this master data, and this is referred to by a specific name called as the chart of accounts. So one company code gets assigned to one chart of accounts. So what does it enable? This enables the company code to make use of the set of general ledger accounts which are available within the chart of accounts which has got assigned to it. Right? Now, so like this, he keeps creating a number of general ledger accounts within the master. So the project may have thousands of general ledger accounts based on the business complexities and the nature of the business. Right? So like this, you can have thousands of general ledger accounts, and you can also what should I say? You can also add them at any point in time, but provided one is given the authorizations. Again, not everybody can add data to the master data. Okay, the permissions or the authorizations are restricted to a very few people. So as we discussed, it is to maintain the sanctity of the master data. So only when you get a clearance, then and only then the person who has the authorization can create the master data or can add data into the structure. Okay. Now, like this, he creates the finance person. He creates data, and he allows the business to make use of this general ledger accounts. So this itself in the live projects, it's a big task, and this consumes a lot of time. So in the live scenario, this actually takes up a lot of time, and this must be constructed with utmost care because the whole success of the project depends upon how you have constructed and how you have enabled the business transactions through your general ledger accounts. Right? So this here comes the expertise of the finance person. So normally this is vested with the creation of the general ledger master data is vested with a few experienced people, experienced functional consultants. So they alone or they are responsible to create the master data, or they create the master data in the first place, and probably the other people who have the authorizations can add general ledger accounts based on the requirements. So this is one of the most important creations of a finance person, because the whole transactions or the whole business lies on this backbone called as a chart of accounts. Right? So once he creates this, he assigns this to the company code, and or he assigns this to the business entity which we would have created as a company code within the SAP system, and allowing the person or allowing the users to use that particular master data for their transactions. Okay, so normally why do you integrate with the other modules? The integration concept is there to automate the process. So without the human intervention, let us say the goods come in. The person at the store enters, and here the entry already takes place. This is how your integration helps you, right? So here uh, I was coming to the master data. So this is how the finance person has to be very, very careful in allowing the integration also to take place, and which places does the integration take place and how it takes place. And accordingly, he also constructs the master data. So how effectively he does that, he declares the or decides the success of the SAP implementation project. So we also discussed, like, say the person, the FI person, as he keeps adding experience to his, or as he keeps handling projects, he also gets exposed to the controlling module or the management accounting module. So there again, he is creating the master data for the cost centers, profit centers, and various other things as far as the controlling module or the management accounting requirements they arise. Okay, so basically you have the concepts like your product costing, you have your profitability analysis module. So let's not get deeper into the controlling module. So this is how you actually get into the controlling module also as a functional consultant, and as a financial functional consultant you also touch upon areas of controlling to enable the management reporting functions. So as I said, the management, whatever reports you generate in the controlling module, they are highly sensitive, and they actually remain within the top management, enabling them to strategize their decisions. It helps you in the strategic decision making. Now, in SAP, is there a mechanism where you can draw the information in the form of reports? It's a wonderful tool for you to have reports. Let me just take you through the live SAP system to show you where you can extract the reports as the end users. Typical role of an end user would be also to draw the reports, right? Just give me a minute. I will log into the SAP system. Give me a minute. I'm just logging into the system. So I'm just sharing the SAP screen. So as end users, when you want to see a particular output or a report, so we are familiar with this. I go to the accounting module. So I can also get into the human resources. So the concerned person enters his own module and then he does his functions. Accounting, financial accounting, general ledger. So each and every tab out here has something called, or each and every option here has got something called as an information system. So this is in the information system, you can have n number of standard reports already being available, made available to you in as a part of the standard, right? So this is exactly what I was talking to you. This is what you're seeing as a chart of accounts. It is the first master data that is created by the finance person. So now if I want to see what exactly this consists of. So this is the transaction code. Okay, no need to remember that. Okay, but why I'm showing you the screen is SAP has got a wonderfully inbuilt information systems through which you can draw any types of reports you want. Okay, I'm just showing you an example. So if I want to pull out the information of a specific chart of accounts, so since I know the standards, I would give the INT as an international chart of accounts, and I would execute. This is the execute button. The clock button, what you're seeing here, is the execute button. So I execute this option and I get this information. So what is this information? This is the master data called as the chart of accounts. So which is the basic necessity for your finance module. Okay, you can see the general ledger accounts on your left, and you can see the English explanation for that particular GL account, general ledger account. Now, there is a wonderful thing allowed in SAP. It can talk to Excel or whatever. You can export data to whatever form you want. So now suppose I want to see the same thing, it's the same information in Excel. This information I drew it out in SAP. I want to see this report in Excel. Is it possible? Yes. This is how I carry on. More, go to list, go to export. You can see the spreadsheet option. So you click on the spreadsheet option and you get this, and you keep giving it an OK, or in the form of a tick mark, or maybe you can press even enter. So it asks you where exactly you want to store the file. So I would say I would want to store it in a name called new on my desktop. So I would save it. So it is going to give me this dump. So now can you see the new Excel file? And it has taken the dump of the output what was given by SAP in the Excel form. Okay, and
Sir, Excel file cannot be seen, sir.
Excel can be saved because I have saved it on the desktop.
Okay, okay.
The name new.
Mhm.
Okay. So now, is the vice versa possible? Can data from Excel also be imported in SAP? Yes, the answer is yes, we can do that. And we upload, as consultants, we upload the master data by creating an Excel file first and then uploading it to SAP. So just imagine if I want to individually create, let us say the project demands, say some 5,000 general ledger accounts, because I'm dealing with a huge business, so spread across the globe, and I would want, the business actually requires 5,000 general ledger accounts, 5,000 plus. So individually creating them in the SAP system is a big task. So what I do, I would put all the data in the Excel sheet, I would save that Excel sheet, and through a specific tool, I would export this, or I would import this data into SAP. I would bring the data, whatever is there in Excel, into SAP. So both things are possible. SAP to Excel, Excel to SAP. Both ways are possible, right? So this is the most important functionality of, this is the most useful of all the functionalities in SAP. Being flexible to upload or download data. Okay. So that was an example of how you could upload, and also, vice versa, from Excel to, from SAP to Excel, I showed you, right? But data from Excel can also be brought into SAP. Okay. So this is how normally when we construct a master data, we do that. We create a Excel file, then we upload it into the SAP. Okay, so this is one of the most, it's of a utility, great utility in fact. So normally when we have to present data in the form of, apart from SAP, if you want to present data, you can always do that in the form of Excel. Okay, you can also download it into a form of a text file or whatever, then convert it into whatever format you want. All right. Now, so we were also discussing, we finished discussing the business process. We'll also have a look at this tomorrow in detail when we talk about the business process again, the integration. So as I told you, each and every option, when you just navigate within the SAP screen, you have a big library of reports under the head information systems. I can also show it to you in AR. So you have the information system there again. So I can have various reports in that. All right. So like this, you can keep getting into the different, you can navigate within the SAP screens, and then you can go and see the reports in whatever format you want to see. Now, in SAP, let me assume that I have been given, I'm working in the accounts receivable department, and I am given access or authorizations only to enter the customer invoices. Okay, so how do I do it? So I go to financial accounting, accounts receivable, and document entry. So let me say I have this FB70 as the transaction code which I normally use. It is my everyday work. So I don't want to pull down all this menu and everything. So do I have any other option which will simplify my life? Yes. I would select this and I would make it as a favorite. Add to favorites. Can you see this checkbox? Can you see this icon? Add to favorites. Now you can see that it is going and sitting in top of my menu. So instead of pulling down the menu, going to accounting, then coming down all the way to AR, and then getting into document entry, then getting into FB70. So I would pick up the transactions which I'm likely or I have been given authorizations to, and then I would make them as my favorites. So if I double click, it will take me to the same option. So instead of coming down the menu, I can as well make any transaction code as my favorite and then get into that transaction. Okay. So this was a brief thing about how you navigate within the SAP system. But of course, this is as far as the user screen is concerned. And also, when you get into the consultants mode, this is the screen which we will be more often, or rather, this is the screen which we will be using. So we will come here, go to the respective options. If I'm doing something in controlling or maybe in logistics or maybe in MM or maybe SD or maybe HR, whatever. We have, I'm a functional financial consultant, so I would go there and open out the relevant options, do the settings out here, and then I customize the, by doing the settings, what do I mean? I customize my customer's requirement in this specific screen. All right. Yeah. I have stopped sharing, right? Let me take you through the slides again. So these were the slides. Getting into each business case, or we saw the business cycles, procure to pay, order to cash. So he has exemplified with the electric car manufacturing unit. So he has taken that example and he has continued for the whole processes, hire to retire, procure to pay, order to cash. So this is typically you're combining with, as a functional FI consultant, you are combining with the HR module person to configure this requirement or implement this requirement or implement this process, hire to retire. Okay, so there is a brief explanation and also the pictorial representation of what this is. So this is basically the responsibility of a HR person. Okay. So as financial consultants, we set up some things for the HR. So we normally integrate with the HR persons at the travel management and also the payroll portion of SAP and also the travel management of SAP. We integrate with them. So we do some settings in SAP FI and they actually do this. They actually do their own settings. So we combine to arrive at this hire to retire process. So this is briefly about the processes. Plan to produce, this is we combine with the production planning module. Okay, here we have concepts of, like say, so basically we can, when you talk about production planning, we are talking about the bill of materials and the material request plan. So this also integrates with your controlling module or the management accounting module, right? So it has more to do with your, again he has taken the same example, right? So today we discussed about what ERP, what SAP, why SAP is getting lot of market, and hence why is it the market leader in ERP, and why is it the market leader? We also saw that, and we also spoke about a few settings within or a few things in SAP finance module, right? From the end user's perspective and also from the consultant's perspective. And we navigated briefly into the SAP system, showing the customizing screen and the end user screen. So typically the end users, they use the easy access screen for them to enter their daily transactions. And we have the IMG screen for the consultants to configure the system or to uh, implement the requirements of the customer who wants to get into SAP, right? So do I take questions from anybody? Any questions? So we'll be looking at the SAP system in a greater detail tomorrow. This we got introduced to a few couple of things what we are likely to do in the remaining part of the sessions, right? So most welcome to ask questions.
Have any queries, please raise it down. Okay, please raise your queries now. Sir is waiting for your queries. Yes.
Is this okay? Is this big enough?
No, sir, blurry. It's blurry.
Oh, I don't know what to do for that blurred this one, madam.
Mhm.
Because somebody asked me as to how to get the credentials, bring in the
Okay.
credentials into the server.
The credentials that they have got, na, that is that ER2 and all, it is in
Correct.
the SAP download only that they have. The
Oh,
instructions are given there.
okay. But once the GUI is downloaded, what happens is you go to the new item
Hmm.
and go to connection, and then you fill in all the informations out here. Go to next. You give all the information in this blank screen. Everybody is able to see the screen, madam?
Yes, sir. A
Yeah,
little blurry is. Can you just please log in again with this or share the screen again?
sure, ma'am. I'll do that. I'll do that.
Yes.
Right? This slide once.
Yes, sir. This is okay.
Oh, when I want to share the SAP thing, it is blurred. Now is it okay?
The slide is okay, but SAP screen is okay.
Okay.
Just please try to log in with the SAP screen again, sir.
I tried it, madam. I don't know why it is still blurred out. One second. I will totally exit out from the system and then come in. Probably that will help. Now is it okay?
Yes, sir, but
So this is the
yes,
screen what I get once when I double click on the logon pad, which you would have downloaded. Okay, assuming that everybody has downloaded. So how do I fill in these details? So once when I double click, I get this particular screen in the minimized form like this. So for you people, I have just maximized that, and I would go to the new item icon. Can you see this new item on the left top? So I click on that, go to the connection option. Here I would go to the next. Can you see this next which is being highlighted in the blue color? The next button. I click on next. I would enter all the details, okay, whatever information at the relevant place. And once when I do that, once when I give the information, the finish button would get highlighted. So after filling in the requisite information, I would say finish, and I would go back and double click to log into that particular server. So I would get that information on my screen out here like this. Now, so the ER2 is my server. So to enter this server, I would double click and I would enter giving my credentials. So I have been given access to the 600 server with my user ID and my password. So log in again. Just a minute. So after giving my relevant information, I would enter into this particular screen called as easy access. This is the first screen which will be available to you as soon as you log into your SAP system. All right. So this is the way you enter your server credentials. Once you download your graphic user interface or your logon pad, for which the instructions are available to you in the help section in your energy mail. So kindly follow that and you will be able to download the GUI. Once you download the GUI, the information of the server should be given in the way I showed it. And once when you give the relevant information, this is the screen you will enter once you give your valid credentials. So I hope the question was answered. Let me pick up a few questions from the chat if at all there are any questions. So I think I don't see any questions for me. I think one Mr. Vijay Shaw has asked attempts login failed. So one should be very careful about the case sensitivity of the password, sir. So please be very careful when you give your user ID and your password. So
So there is
normally
one.
it gets locked. Yes, ma'am.
So there is one question: is what is the difference between ERP and SAP?
Okay, fine. Okay. SAP is another ERP. That's it. So SAP is one of the ERPs. So the enterprise resource planning is what should I say? It encompasses all the functionalities of the organization, right? It enables to bind the functions of the organization, be it your purchases, sales, whatever. So SAP is one among the ERP packages. So earlier you had something like JD Edwards, Ban, you had PeopleSoft as the one of the earliest ERPs, PeopleSoft. So SAP is one of the ERPs. Now gaining a lot of market as far as the ERP market goes. Because of the widespread of the industries what is using SAP. So you talk about the media, you talk about the oil, you talk about banking, you talk about public sectors, you talk about real estate. So you name any one of the business, you name any one of the industries, they have started using SAP, right? So this is the reason as to why SAP has gained a lot of market, simply because the way and effective way it is binding the functions of the organizations.
So there is one more question. That's can you explain again what is master data?
Simply put, the master data is the data which you create for you to make use of during your transactions. For example, as I've always exemplified with the finance uh, transaction. Let's put a transaction, let's say example, and so for me to use in the to rate transaction of paying the salaries or paying the rent, I should have two general ledger accounts. So who creates general ledger accounts? Finance consultant. So where does he create? He creates this as a master data. So or the general ledger accounts, he must have the general. Okay, let me further exemplify this with the customer or vendor. Let us say you are purchasing something, right, from a vendor. So for you to make the purchase entry, so what is the entry? Purchase account debit to vendor. Vendor. The vendors with whom you are transacting, they become the master data, and the recording of the transactions, be it your invoice or be it the payment made to the vendors or to the customers, create the transaction part of the data. Similarly, your customer, your bank. This in a financial consultant's career, he creates different sets of master data. So master data is one from from which you're pulling out the data for you to record the transactions. Understood?
So one more question. Does SAP H2R follow Indian labor law system?
Uh, can I see that question? I don't know. So all, sir, let me put it this way. The SAP is designed to follow all your, you'll follow all the accounting or maybe whatever the rules and regulations the land follows, right? So you are going as a consultant, it's the duty to bring it into your system.
So one more question. There is, can you explain that Excel part again?
Sure, sure. So the Excel part was nothing but I was just trying to explain that whatever data you see in SAP or you extract in SAP can be taken to Excel also, can be downloaded to Excel. Let me say you create thousands of general ledger accounts. So suppose somebody wants it of an Excel. So is it possible for you to download the information from SAP to Excel? Yes. So I will also show it to you again. Let me take you to the SAP system. Ma'am, can you please confirm if you're able to see my SAP screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So how did I extract the data
Sir, please
from
maximize it because it's very small.
it? I have maximized it, madam. My whole screen is full of SAP. That's it.
Okay.
So how do I extract data from SAP to Excel? So I'm just exemplifying with taking a specific master data in Excel, downloading the master data of the function FI module into Excel. I need to log in again. So I would give some chart of accounts, sample chart of accounts. So when I pull this data out in SAP, suppose I want to have the same data being maybe I want it in Excel or maybe even in Word or maybe in the form of a text. Okay, so how would I do it? I can also, let me see if I can do it from here. No, okay. So I would go to this icon, more. I would go to list. So I would go to export. I would select how or to what format I would want to download this data, right? So example spreadsheet. So it will keep asking me for some information. So I would download it in Excel SX form. So where exactly do you want to export? I would say E1, something, E1 file. Okay. So I would want to download this on my desktop. I would give the destination and I would save. So there will be some messages, just try to allow them, not a problem. Now can you see this, the whole information SAP has come down to Excel. So this is the way you actually transfer data from SAP to Excel or maybe even to the Word file or even to your text format file.
Sir, the Excel
Yes, ma'am.
sheet which you have downloaded is cannot be seen here. If you can share that also, the
Sure.
students will be
Yeah,
able
yeah.
to see.
Right. Oh, oh, that is not seen, is it? Oh, I will share that.
No, sir, no, not seen.
I will share that. This is the Excel sheet from which I have downloaded the data from SAP. I have followed that process which I showed it to you, and I gave the destination, and the Excel and the file or the output has got saved in the form of an Excel file at the relevant place. Madam, the Excel sheet is visible now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Screen is not visible.
It was visible earlier, sir. In between, sometimes it happens.
Yeah, no, I just took up some message in the chat.
There is one more. Can we have cost center wise report in SAP?
Sure, you can do that. We can do that. We go to the relevant place, and so like I said, I will just share that screen again. The cost center report is asking, right?
Yes, sir.
I go to the relevant place where I can see the cost center information. In time.